You're home alone. The house is quiet, too quiet. That's when you hear it, the creak of a floorboard that shouldn't be creaking. The whisper from a room no one's in. Tonight's stories come from deep in the heart of Texas, where people learned the hard way. They were never really alone. Riley had always been the kind of girl people trusted. At 17, she had babysat for nearly every family in her quiet Texas suburb, earning a reputation for being responsible, level-headed, and good with kids. Parents loved her because she didn't just sit on her phone-ish, played games, read stories, and made sure the house was spotless before they returned. That was why the Millers called her. It was late March, the kind of night where the air was thick with the hum of cicadas, a sound that usually wrapped around Riley like a familiar blanket. But tonight, something felt off. The Miller house was typical for the neighbourhood, a single-storey home with a tidy lawn, a wide front porch with a wooden rocking chair that creaked in the breeze. Simple, comfortable. Or so she thought. Max, the Miller's 5-year-old, was easy to put to bed. He yawned through his bedtime story, his eyelids drooping before she even finished. By 9 p.m, he was asleep, and Riley settled onto the couch, pulling out her phone to scroll through videos. That's when she heard it, a whisper. Low, raspy, like someone muttering just outside the window. She muted her video, straining to listen. The cicadas buzzed louder, their rhythmic drone almost drowning it out, but there it was again. A voice, faint, urgent, like someone pleading. Her pulse quickened. Probably just the wind, she told herself. Or maybe a neighbour talking on their porch. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew clearer as the night wore on, sharpening into words she couldn't quite make out. A woman's voice, she thought. Old. Desperate. Riley checked on Max still asleep, his chest rising and falling steadily, then grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. She hesitated at the front door, her fingers hovering over the lock. It's nothing. Just check. The porch was empty. The rocking chair swayed gently, though the air was dead still. Then Cricket moved faster. The whispers stopped. Her flashlight beam swept the porch, catching something under the rocking chair's cushiona faded photograph, edges curled with age. She picked it up. An old woman stared back at her, wide, unblinking eyes. A face lined with deep wrinkles, lips slightly parted as if caught mid-sentence. Riley had never seen her before, but something about that face sent a cold ripple down her spine. Familiar. She hurried back inside, locking the door behind her. The whispers returned, louder now, circling the house like an unseen presence, pacing just beyond the walls. She called the Millers. The line buzzed with static, then silence. By the time they returned at midnight, the whispers had stopped. Riley, pale and shaking, showed them the photo. Mrs. Miller's face drained of colour. That's my grandmother, she whispered. She died in this house 20 years ago. Riley never babysat for them again. But sometimes, late at night, she swears she hears that rocking chair creaking in her dream sand, a whisper she can't quite understand. In 1987, he was a trucker who preferred the open road to crowded diners or noisy bars. He liked the silence, the emptiness, the way the Texas panhandle stretched for miles under a sky so big it made a man feel small. That was why he didn't panic when his truck sputtered and died near an old cabin off a dirt road. The place looked abandoned. A rusted horseshoe hung above the door, its luck long since dried up. The wood was weathered grey, the porch sagging under years of neglect. Inside, it was barrier cot, a table, a cracked window. The air smelled faintly of wet earth, though the ground outside was bone dry. Sam lit a fire in the hearth and settled in. Then, around midnight, he saw it. A faint orange glow bobbing in the field outside. A lantern? It swayed gently, like someone was carrying it, but no figure stood in the darkness. Just the light, floating, never getting closer, never drifting away. Sam watched it for an hour, his skin prickling. Then came the footstep, heavy, deliberate, circling the cabin. Sam grabbed his hunting knife, shouting into the dark. No answer. The air turned frigid, a cold spot pooling in the corner where the lantern's glow seemed to point. He banged on the window, demanding whoever was out there to show themselves. The footsteps stopped. The lantern vanished. Shaken, he stayed awake until dawn. As sunlight crept through the cracked window, he noticed a loose floorboard under the cot. Beneath it, a trapdoor. Inside was a journal, its pages yellowed, the handwriting cramped and frantic. The last entry read, "They won't let me leave. The lantern marks where I fell." It was dated the 12th of October, 1887. Exactly 100 years before. Sam left the cabin at first light, his truck miraculously starting on the first try. But even as he drove away, he couldn't shake the smell of wet earther, the feeling that something had followed him out. Lila, Jake and Mia had been searching for months before they found the apartment. Downtown Austin in 2025 was expensive, but this place, cheap, too cheap. The landlord had shrugged when they asked why, muttering something about previous tenants leaving suddenly. They moved in anyway. The apartment was small, but cozy hardwood floors, exposed brick, big windows that let in the city's neon glow at night. The only oddity was the cracked mirror in the hallway, its surface split by a jagged line. No one knew why it was there, but the landlord refused to remove it. A week in, the landline rang. Odd, since they hadn't given the number to anyone. Lila answered. Static hissed, then silence. She hung up, laughing it off. But it rang again the next night, and the next. By Friday, a voice came through faint, garbled, repeating Lila's own words from earlier that day. "I'll be home soon." She dropped the phone. Jake tried the next time, hearing his own laugh echo back. Mia got her voice too, whispering a joke she'd told hours before. They unplugged the phone. It rang anyway, louder, sharper. The static crackled like something alive. One night, Jake recorded it. When they played it back, a fourth voice cut through the noise low, unfamiliar. "Look behind you." They spun around. The cracked mirror reflected nothing but an empty room, even as they stood right in front of it. The call stopped after that. But last week, Mia swore she heard static from her cell phone and a whisper that sounded like Lila, though Lila was asleep across the room. They're moving out soon. If the voice lets them go,